Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon news update for July 28th, 2025. We're going to start off today at floodlit.org, where it says 4 Mormon family members, 2 parents, and 2 adult biological children have been arrested in Florida after alleged abuse, including SA of several Black foster/adopted children. One child was allegedly kept for long periods of time in a makeshift cage. 4 members of the Griffith family, a Mormon family near Lake City, Florida, were arrested on charges related to abuse, including SA. Dahle Griffith, a 21-year-old son in the family, went on a Spanish-speaking LDS church mission in approximately 2022 to 2024. 4 members of the family, including 2 parents and 2 adult children, were being held without bail after accusations that they had abused several adopted and foster children in the home. An LDS church employee reportedly told investigators the Griffiths primarily fostered and adopted African American children, treating them like workers instead of family members. According to records obtained by Floodlit, we believe the Griffith family may have attended the Branford ward in the Lake City, Florida stake. For some additional news on this case, let's go to NBCnews.com, where it says, husband and wife Brian and Jill Griffith, along with 21-year-old Dahle and 19-year-old Liberty Griffith, were arrested and charged. While at church camp a few days prior to the arrests, one of the children was caught with a functioning electronic stun gun, the sheriff's office said. The sheriff's office added that investigators believed the adopted children were being treated unfairly compared to the Griffith biological children, in addition to the children not knowing their full name or their own birthdays. When Department of Children and Families investigators interviewed the family in their home, it was noted that the adopted children were working on chores while the biological children were playing or watching TV, according to the statement. Bond for all of the adults was set at $500,000 each. I have so many questions about this. Did these adults have recent bishops' interviews? And if so, why did the bishop not discern that they were abusing children in their home? Did these adults have callings? And again, if they did, how did they get callings if God issues each call and he should have known they were abusing children and instead of giving them callings, questioned them about their home life? Now let's go to a video by Amber Dawn Pierce. She is a pro-LDS influencer who recently said the following.
We went to a temple open house and was able to sit down with a general authority and ask him whatever questions I wanted about temples. So here's some fun true or false trivia for you.
Okay, wait. Why did she get to sit down with the general authority? That is not something that normal, unpopular, regular Mormon members get to do. Is it because she's a successful influencer? And of course, she doesn't name the general authority because if she said who it was, they would then have to be accountable for what they said to her.
Is it true that the angel Moroni will not be placed on top of temple spires anymore? True. He explained that many cultures worship golden statues, and some people have the misconception that we actually worship the angel Moroni, which we don't. We worship Jesus Christ. And so the prophet felt inspired to make this change. If a new temple gets an angel Moroni, it will be very, very rare. Now, all the current temples that have angel Moronis on top of them will remain.
All right, does that mean they will take the golden cows out from under the baptistry in the Salt Lake Temple? If I remember correctly, having a golden calf around in biblical times didn't turn out to be a good thing.
Is it true that the church already owns land for over 1,000 temples? This is actually false. The church does own plenty of land. It's not necessarily for temples.
You are right. It is not. They have farmland and they have land with housing on it. They own office buildings and industrial parks. It would feel more like a religious organization if they did use it all for temples.
What he did tell me, though, was that a committee studies different cities across the world 15 to 20 years in advance and tries to determine and project what cities will need a temple when.
Wait, the prophet doesn't pronounce temples when the Lord reveals them? It's just a committee? This seems less like God's one true church with modern prophets and more like an everyday corporation.
It was also interesting to note that once a temple is announced in General Conference, that temple is already paid for in full. We do not go into debt for temples.
That sickens me that she didn't already know that. The church has billions of dollars. Does she really not know? Does she not understand how much money that is?
True or false? It's going to take quite some time for all these temples that have been announced to be built. False. Did you know that in the next 5 to 6 years, there will be 175 temple open houses and dedications?
I'll believe it when I see it. They only managed 16 last year.
Another cool fact, it has taken the church 195 years to dedicate 208 temples. And we are almost repeating that in just 5 to 6 years.
Maybe. We will see.
Okay, my favorite one. True or false? There have already been so many temples announced recently, it's likely going to slow down a little bit. False. The goal is that every single member of the church in the world will have a temple within 1 hour of travel distance from them. That's a lot of temples, and that's a lot of blessings.
I really hope that doesn't happen. I can't think of a bigger waste of land, space, time, and money than building LDS temples. Now we're going to go back to floodlit.org for the following information. Former Mormon missionary William James Purdy, 28, arrested on CSA charges. He allegedly essayed children during and after his mission in Tonga in 2017. At least 14 victims identified so far. He was originally from Utah. In July 2025, Purdy was arrested in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania after a federal grand jury indictment on charges related to exploitation. As of July 24, 2025, the investigation had identified 14 minor victims throughout Tonga. According to a U.S. Department of Justice press release, Purdy was arrested by Tonga police in October of 2022 when an 8-year-old boy disclosed that Purdy assaulted him during their tutoring sessions. When Purdy was released from jail, he allegedly continued to essay children. In March of 2023, just prior to his scheduled trial, Purdy fled Tonga using an assumed identity and returned to Utah. Now we will go to the Temple Square Facebook page where it says, "Did you know there was a baby born inside the Salt Lake Temple?" Emma Bennett took a chance at attending the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple even though she was 9 months pregnant. When she went into labor inside the temple, Amanda Polly Savage Cook, who was a skilled midwife, helped deliver her healthy baby boy. Amanda Polly Savage Cook is the great-great-grandmother of Elder Quentin L. Cook of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. And I'm sure it wasn't partly Quentin's stellar pioneer stock that helped him secure a position in the Mormon Quorum of the 12. I actually went to the temple when I was very pregnant quite a few times. I do have 6 children, and if I had $1 for every time one of the older ladies working in the temple said, "Don't have that baby here," I could have gotten a significant portion of my tithing back. Now we will go to abc4.com for an update on former BYU baseball player Canon Dahle. He pled guilty to lesser charges in an Idaho court on May 13th after originally being accused of child SA. Dahle, 22, is being charged with injury to a child. According to the amended criminal complaint filed on May 13th, Dahle's charges were changed from felony lewd conduct with a child under 16 to 2 counts of felony injury to a child, which is a lesser charge. The charges were lessened because Dahle took a plea deal. The amended complaint alleges that Dahle had sexual contact with a minor, which caused injury to the child. Felony injury to child is applied when a plaintiff intentionally causes a child to suffer or causes unjustifiable physical pain or mental suffering, according to Idaho Code 18-1501. Dahle was arrested by Provo police and charged with felony lewdness involving a child in Bingham County, Idaho on February 10th, according to court records. He was later extradited from Utah to Idaho on February 13th. Now let's talk about some interesting numbers and facts involving the prophet of the Mormon Church, Russell Nelson. He married his first wife, Dantzel, on August 31st, 1945 in the Salt Lake Temple. Russell was 20 years old. Side note, he had not and never did serve a 2-year proselytizing mission. and Dantzel was 19. Russell's parents and siblings could not attend the sealing because they were inactive, and they had hurt feelings about not being able to see Russell get married, which is totally understandable. Russell and Dantzel's first child, Marcia, was born in July of 1948. They would have 8 more daughters and 1 son over the next several years, one of which was a daughter named Wendy, born in Washington, D.C. on April 5th, 1951. We will speak more of this daughter, Wendy, in just a second. Dantzel Nelson died unexpectedly at the Nelsons' home in Salt Lake City on February 12, 2005, at age 78. Just 3 months later, the Rome, Italy stake was created on May 22, 2005, which is when Russell first had contact with then Wendy Watson. The story goes that Russell and Wendy's meeting was guided by the Lord. They met after Wendy, through a returned sister missionary, was delivering notes to Elder Nelson and Elder Hillam while Elders Russell and Hillam were in Rome for the creation of this first stake. Wendy and her friend Sherry Dew were already in Europe on vacation, and Sherry mentioned the stake creating event to Wendy. They initially considered attending, but ultimately decided to just have notes sent via the returned missionary due to itinerary changes. Elder Nelson had also read one of Wendy's books on the flight over to Rome and felt prompted to reach out to her. I could not find any information about an exact date when they actually met in person for the first time, but I did find this troubling tidbit from LDS Living. When Elder Nelson proposed, there was a lot they had yet to learn about each other, but as he said to Wendy, "There are plenty of things I do not know about you, but I do know revelation." Is anyone else getting Joseph Smith vibes from this? I really hope that Russell didn't claim an angel with a flaming sword told him that Wendy better marry him or else. It gets even more troubling after hearing what Wendy said about the dating and proposal. This comes from a video she did in the church news. Russell Nelson had for several weeks made overtures to getting to know me better. In my mind, I had wrestled with it and was quite certain there was no possible way that could be right. And so one day I left the city and drove up to a little mountain retreat to fast and pray up there and to do all the things that people do when they're really serious. Actually desperate to absolutely know the Lord's will. After 2 days, I knew in 3 different ways that this was the Lord's will. It was tough. We had different expectations. He was still grieving Dantzel, without a doubt. Here we are thrown together. It was a huge change. I'd say dramatic. It was traumatic, leaving my profession that I loved, that I had devoted my life to. Russell and Wendy were married on April 6, 2006, just 1 year and 2 months after Dantzel had passed away, and less than 1 year after they had their inspired note passing in Rome. A couple of interesting facts. Wendy Watson was born May 31st, 1950, and is just 11 months older than Russell's own daughter, Wendy. Russell and his now wife, Wendy, have a 26-year age gap. Russell is currently 100 years old, and Wendy is only 74. Wendy Watson's profession before she married Russell and gave it up was as a gerontologist, or someone who specializes in the study of aging and the care of older adults. I went down that particular rabbit hole last week after my sister and I enjoyed some wine, and I just had to share it. We also got off on a tangent about the word luncheon. I heard that word all of the time growing up in Mormonism. The Relief Society sisters always seem to be throwing some sort of luncheon. I don't know that I've heard that word used nearly as much since leaving the church. What do you think? Do people say luncheon outside of Mormonism as much as the Relief Society women say it inside Mormonism? When is the last time you went to a luncheon? Also, if you say the word luncheon enough times and possibly you're halfway through a glass of wine, it starts to sound really funny. And last up to date, let's finish with this great quote that says, a 1973 study revealed, when kids who already loved drawing were promised a reward, they started enjoying it less. They drew less often, and their work lost its spark. But the kids who drew freely, their passion stayed alive. The study exposed a hidden truth. External rewards can kill intrinsic motivation, the kind that comes from within. So what does this mean for us, for our kids, for our lives. It means that the moment we tie a reward to something we naturally love, our brain starts doing it for the reward, not for the love. Joy becomes performance. Play becomes pressure, and the inner flame, the one that sparks curiosity and creativity, starts to dim. As parents and educators, our good intentions can backfire. When we say, "Great job, here's a sticker," we might be shrinking their joy instead of nurturing it. It's not the praise itself, it's the hidden deal behind it. The subtle message becomes, "Do this so I'll be proud of you." Instead of seeing children as already whole, we train them to chase approval. But this isn't just about children. Most of us grew up in systems that rewarded the outcome, not the process. So now, as adults, we struggle to rest, to create, to just be, unless we feel it's productive. We lost the muscle of intrinsic motivation. We abandoned the inner child who just wanted to draw. So we overthink, overperform, overwork. We measure our worth by what we achieve, not by how alive we feel. We set goals not from desire, but from fear of not being enough. This is how the reward system gets wired into our nervous system. We became the carrot on our own stick. So what can we do differently? Let them draw for the joy of it. Let yourself draw for the joy of it. Notice when you're doing something to get something back, approval, likes, validation, and gently choose presence over performance. Reclaim the sacred in the ordinary. This one experiment speaks to how we educate, how we parent, and how we live. It shows us that the deepest spark of joy, love, learning needs freedom, not pressure. So start small. Unlearn the performance trap and follow the quiet thread of what feels good, even if no one is clapping. We were all born curious, but somewhere along the way, we were taught to trade joy for gold stars. This post isn't just about a study with kids and crayons. It's about what happens when we start performing instead of playing. In our classrooms, in our relationships, in our own hearts. Let this be a reminder. You don't need to earn your right to create, rest, or feel alive. And that's your update for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.